At my 50th birthday party, in front of all my friends, family, and even my colleagues, my own son, my flesh and blood, grabbed the microphone and screamed, "Everyone's sick of you. You're a terrible mother and a worse person." The words echoed through the stunned silence of the function hall, each syllable a dagger twisting in my heart. The air was thick with disbelief, and all eyes were on me. Was I wrong for what I did next? Tell me, honestly, would you have done the same thing? Let me take you back to where it all began, to a life that, from the outside, probably looked perfect. I'm Clara, and for years, I built a life that many envied. A successful career as a marketing executive, a beautiful home, a loving husband, Michael, and two wonderful children, Daniel and Emily. Daniel, the eldest, was always a bright kid, full of energy and potential. From his earliest days, I poured everything into him. Every extracurricular activity he showed an interest in, every tutor he needed, every dream he articulated, I made it my mission to help him achieve it. He was the apple of my eye, and I truly believed I was doing everything right to set him up for a brilliant future. Emily, my daughter, was a few years younger, a sweet, artistic soul, much more grounded than her brother. While I loved them both fiercely, I admit I always had a special, almost intense focus on Daniel. He was my firstborn, and perhaps, subconsciously, I saw a reflection of my own ambitions in him. Michael, my husband, was a steady, supportive presence. He often gently reminded me to ease up on Daniel, to let him breathe, but I always brushed it off. I genuinely believed I was motivating him, pushing him to be his best. When Daniel was in high school, he started getting involved with a group of friends that I wasn't particularly fond of. They were a bit rough around the edges, not academically inclined, and seemed to have a penchant for late-night shenanigans. I tried to talk to Daniel about it, to explain my concerns, but he just rebelled more. He started sneaking out, his grades slipped, and our once close relationship began to fray. I attributed it to typical teenage rebellion, a phase he would grow out of. I doubled down on my efforts, enrolling him in more advanced placement courses, hiring more tutors, hoping to steer him back onto the right path. The more I pushed, the more he pulled away. Our conversations became arguments, and soon, we were barely speaking. He would often retort, "You just don't understand me, Mom," or "You only care about my grades, not me." Each accusation stung, but I told myself it was for his own good. When it came time for college applications, Daniel, despite his intelligence, hadn't put in the work. He barely scraped by on his SATs, and his GPA was mediocre. I was devastated. I had envisioned him at a prestigious university, following in my footsteps. I pulled every string I had, called in every favor. I used my connections to get him interviews, wrote glowing recommendation letters myself, and even resorted to some subtle and not so subtle pressure on admissions officers I knew. Ultimately, he got into a decent, but not top-tier, state university. I convinced myself it was a victory, but Daniel saw it as another example of my overbearing control. He was furious. "You just had to manipulate everything, didn't you?" he spat at me. "I wanted to go to art school, Mom. I wanted to pursue my passion, but you never listened." The words hit me hard, but I dismissed them as youthful foolishness. Art school? That wasn't a stable career path. I was trying to protect him. During his college years, things only got worse. He started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, dropping out of classes and racking up debt. I paid for everything, of course. His tuition, his rent, his living expenses, even his legal fees when he got into a minor scuffle at a bar. Each time, I lectured him, begged him to get his act together, but he just seemed to resent me more. He saw my help not as love, but as control, as a way to keep him dependent. He refused to get a job, claiming he was finding himself. Meanwhile, Emily was quietly excelling. She pursued her art, got into a respected art academy on her own merit, and was financially independent, supporting herself with freelance work. I was proud of her, of course, but my emotional energy remained fixated on Daniel, always trying to fix him, always trying to pull him back from the brink. After college, Daniel drifted from one dead-end job to another, never holding anything down for long. He blamed everyone else for his failures, his bosses, the economy, even me. He would frequently call, not to chat, but to demand money, always accompanied by veiled accusations about how I'd ruined his life by pushing him too hard. He'd tell me that if I hadn't forced him into a path he hated, he would have found his true calling. He would tell me that I had stifled his creativity, broken his spirit, and made him feel inadequate. Each call was a fresh wound, a new wave of guilt washing over me. Michael tried to intervene, suggesting we cut him off financially, hoping it would force him to stand on his own 2 feet. But I couldn't do it. He was my son, and I felt responsible. I couldn't bear the thought of him struggling, even if it was a struggle he had created for himself. My friends, seeing my distress, offered advice, some suggesting tough love, others empathy. I listened, nodded, but ultimately continued to bail Daniel out, convinced that one day he would see the light. Then came the grand plan for my 50th birthday party. I had always envisioned a big celebration, a milestone marking a successful life, surrounded by the people I loved. I booked a beautiful function hall, invited everyone who mattered, and meticulously planned every detail. Daniel, predictably, was resistant. He grumbled about having to come, about having to put on a show. I begged him, telling him how much it would mean to me to have both my children by my side. He finally agreed, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. I even offered to pay for his travel and a new suit, hoping to sweeten the deal. Looking back, perhaps that was another mistake, another instance of me trying to buy his affection. The day of the party arrived, and everything was perfect. The hall was decorated beautifully, the music was playing, and I was surrounded by smiling faces. Michael looked so handsome, Emily radiated joy, and even Daniel, for a while, seemed to be enjoying himself, albeit with a forced smile. There was a moment when I looked around, feeling a sense of immense gratitude, thinking that maybe, just maybe, all the struggles with Daniel were behind us, that we were finally turning a corner. I was so incredibly naive. Around the middle of the evening, after dinner and before the speeches, my husband, Michael, got up to say a few heartfelt words. He spoke about our journey together, about our family, and how proud he was of me. It was genuinely touching, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Then, he passed the microphone to Emily, who, with her characteristic warmth, shared some lovely childhood anecdotes and expressed her love and appreciation. The crowd was beaming, and I felt a warmth spread through me. Finally, it was Daniel's turn. My heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and nerves. I hoped, desperately, that he would say something kind, something that would signify a truce, a moment of reconciliation. He walked up to the microphone, his face unreadable. He took a deep breath, and then, that's when he unleashed the verbal assault that shattered my world. Everyone's sick of you. You're a terrible mother and a worse person. The words, raw and venomous, hung in the air, piercing the festive atmosphere like a shard of ice. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. The silence that followed his outburst was deafening, punctuated only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. My son, in front of everyone I knew and loved, had publicly humiliated me. My cheeks burned with shame, and a wave of nausea washed over me. I saw my friends looking at me with pity, my colleagues with thinly veiled discomfort, and my husband and daughter with shock and concern. Daniel stood there, a defiant sneer on his face, as if he had just delivered a masterful performance. He expected me to cower, to cry, to apologize. But something snapped inside me. All those years of trying, of sacrificing, of enduring his blame and ingratitude, suddenly crystallized into a burning sense of injustice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. What would you do when your own son publicly shames you at your milestone birthday party? I stood up, my legs trembling slightly, but my resolve hardening with every step. My husband, Michael, started to come towards me, a worried frown on his face, but I subtly shook my head, silently telling him to stay put. I walked directly to Daniel, who still held the microphone, a smug expression plastered across his face. Without a word, I gently, but firmly, took the microphone from his hand. The weight of it felt significant, like a weapon I was about to wield. Daniel looked surprised, his smirk faltering slightly as he realized I wasn't going to crumble. I took a deep breath, scanning the faces in the room. There was a mix of shock, curiosity, and a few sympathetic nods. I looked at Daniel, directly into his eyes, and I saw a flash of fear, quickly replaced by a renewed defiance. "Thank you, Daniel," I began, my voice clear and steady, devoid of the tremor I felt inside. The sound of my own voice, so calm amidst the chaos, surprised even me. "Thank you for that heartfelt birthday message." A nervous titter went through the crowd. I continued, "You know, for 50 years, I've tried to be the best mother I could be. I've sacrificed, I've worked tirelessly, and I've always put my children first." I paused, letting the words sink in, making eye contact with various people in the room. I could see some of my oldest friends nodding, knowing the truth of my words. "I remember when Daniel was a little boy," I went on, my voice softening slightly, but maintaining its firm edge. "He had a dream of becoming an astronaut. I bought him every book, every toy, even took him to space camp. I wanted him to reach for the stars, literally." I glanced at Daniel, who was now looking uncomfortable, his gaze shifting to the floor. "And when he wanted to pursue his interest in music, I bought him a guitar, paid for lessons, and encouraged him to join a band. I wanted him to find his passion." I then took a slow, deliberate sip of water from a glass on the nearby table, giving myself a moment to gather my thoughts and letting the tension in the room build. Everyone was hanging on my every word. My deepest wish, as any mother's, was for my children to be happy, successful, and independent, I stated, my voice gaining strength. I wanted them to have more opportunities than I ever did. And yes, sometimes that meant pushing them, guiding them, perhaps even making decisions I believed were in their best interest, even if they didn't see it at the time. I looked directly at Daniel again. "Daniel, you said everyone is sick of me. And you called me a terrible mother and a worse person. You believe I controlled your life, that I stifled your dreams." I let his accusations hang in the air, allowing the audience to remember them. "But let me tell you what I see." My voice dropped slightly, becoming more serious, more pointed. "I see a son who, at 27 years old, still calls his mother every month to ask for money for his rent, for his utilities, for his creative projects that never materialize." The words were like a punch, and I saw Daniel flinch. "I see a son who has blamed every single one of his failures on me, on his father, on the system, on anyone but himself." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. My husband, Michael, now stood by my side, a look of grim determination on his face, his hand resting reassuringly on my back. Emily, too, stood tall, her eyes fixed on her brother, a mixture of sadness and understanding in her gaze. "And you know what?" I continued, my voice rising slightly. "I'm tired. I'm tired of the accusations. I'm tired of the ingratitude. I'm tired of carrying the weight of your choices, Daniel, when you refuse to carry them yourself." I took another deep breath. "So, tonight, on my 50th birthday, a day that should be about celebration and gratitude, you've given me a gift. You've given me the clarity I've desperately needed." I looked around the room, making eye contact with my guests, then back at Daniel, whose face had gone pale. "From this moment forward, Daniel," I announced, my voice resonating with finality, "you are on your own. My financial support, my constant interventions, my efforts to fix you, they end tonight. You want to be an independent adult? Then be one. You want to pursue your dreams? Then go pursue them, with your own effort, your own money, and your own determination." The silence in the room was absolute, even heavier than before. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and dawning horror. He finally seemed to understand the gravity of what I was saying. I wasn't just scolding him. I was cutting the cord, publicly and unequivocally. "I will always love you, Daniel," I concluded, my voice softer now, tinged with a deep, aching sadness. But love does not mean enabling. Love means allowing you to learn, to grow, and to take responsibility for your own life. And that is what I am doing now. I then turned to the astonished crowd, forcing a smile. Now, I said, my voice returning to a more festive tone, who's ready for some cake? The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then grew into a resounding ovation, a mixture of relief, admiration, and a touch of shock. The aftermath was, as you can imagine, a whirlwind. The party continued, but with a different energy. Many guests came up to me, offering words of support, hugs, and telling me I had done the right thing, that it was long overdue. Michael held me close, telling me how proud he was of my strength. Emily simply hugged me tightly, a silent acknowledgement of her understanding and support. Daniel, after my speech, had slunk out of the party, his face a mask of humiliation. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. For weeks, he didn't call. I half expected him to show up at my door, demanding an explanation, or worse, begging for money. But he didn't. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to his usual demands and complaints. There were times I wondered if I had gone too far, if I had irrevocably damaged our relationship. The guilt, a familiar companion, tried to creep back in, but I fought it off. I reminded myself of his words, of the public humiliation, and of the years of enabling that had led to that moment. Months passed. It was hard, really hard, not knowing what he was doing, not being able to step in and fix things. But I held firm. Michael was my rock during this time, constantly reminding me of my resolve. Then one day, almost 6 months after the party, I received a short email from Daniel. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. It was more of an update. He had found a steady job, working in a small design agency, making decent money. He had moved into a shared apartment and was paying his own way. He mentioned that it was tough, but that he was learning a lot. The email ended with, "Mom, I still don't agree with everything you did, but I'm trying to figure things out for myself now. I guess. Thank you for the push." It wasn't the heartfelt apology I might have dreamed of, but it was a beginning. It was an acknowledgement, a glimmer of hope that he was finally, truly, standing on his own 2 feet. It's still a long road, and our relationship is far from fully healed. But for the first time in years, I feel a sense of peace, a quiet hope that Daniel might just find his way, not because I paved it for him, but because he's finally walking it himself. Sometimes, the hardest love is the truest love. It's about having the courage to let go, even when it breaks your heart, to allow someone to find their own strength. It's a lesson I learned on my 50th birthday, a painful but ultimately liberating experience. I may have lost a dream of what our mother-son relationship could be, but I gained the truth and perhaps a path to a healthier future for both of us. If you've ever had to make a difficult decision for someone you love, or if you've been in a similar situation, please like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section below. I'll see you all in the next story.